just be talking and then I'll just be talking for a little bit and then I'll present the demo kind of towards the end if that's okay. Is everybody able to hear me online and in person? We're good? All right. So yeah, hi everybody. Thanks for coming out. The presentation today will be a little bit quick. As introduced, I'm Cole. I'm a second-year computer science student at the University of Guelph. I worked on this project as part of Civic Tech Waterloo Region with a few other audience members. So Colin and a few other members from Civic Tech Waterloo Region. So first, I'll just give a little bit of information about Project Ploughshares. Does anyone here know already who Project Ploughshares is, who knew before this project? Show of hands. Nobody? Yeah, fair enough. I didn't know about them either. So as part of Civic Tech Waterloo Region, we often have speakers, just like I am speaking now at Civic Tech Toronto, I guess. And one of our speakers was Kelsey Gallagher, who is a researcher from Project Ploughshares. And what they do is they use publicly available information from the internet to track exports that relate to Canadian exports or exports of Canadian goods from other countries to hold the government of Canada accountable and Canadian companies accountable. So they've been running a lot longer than Civic Tech Waterloo Region has been running. They've been running for, I think, over 40 years, and they've tracked thousands and thousands of military exports. Most of them benign are just going to allies, but occasionally when they find an export going to a country where they find that war crimes are being committed or there's an embargo and the exports shouldn't end up there, they reach out to the Canadian government. And I think there's a process they follow to basically get the government to make sure that no longer happens. I reached out to Kelsey Gallagher as well. He unfortunately couldn't come today, but he is one of the researchers who we were mostly working with for this project. Now, where Civic Tech Waterloo Region comes in is after Kelsey came to speak with us, we realized that a big part of what they're currently doing is, one, outdated, which is something we didn't really touch because Ploughshares said if it works, it works, but also just slow and very manual, which is the part that we looked at and tried to improve for our project. So specifically, I'll share my screen for this part. All right, so it looks like my screen is up here. So Project Ploughshares mentioned specifically that their main source of information is a website called MarketLine. So this is MarketLine. I know it's a little bit dense, hard to read right now. You don't have to read every single thing on here, but it's basically a list of articles written about companies, not all Canadian companies too. And so what they would have to do is go through this every day. And you can see, my bad. So just 3 articles were published today. And then it looks like about 5 or 7 were published yesterday. And they would have to click on each one of these articles and then read it and then check for any information about, yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. So they would click through these articles, reading them and trying to find any information about Canadian military exports. And most of them don't even relate to Canada, but they were checked anyways because they also wanted to be notified if an export goes from the United States to another country, but the United States is shipping something that came out of Canada first. So they wanted to catch, we send something to the United States, they send something to someone else, and it ends up where it shouldn't. So our project, what we worked with Project Ploughshares on to automate this was, I think I'm only sharing my window, so give me a second here. Yeah, all right, stop sharing. And then I will share, all right, share my entire screen. So what we made for them is basically an automation tool that will go through and scrape MarketLine automatically so that they can focus their time on other things. So MarketLine was their main source that they kind of had to go to every day. But then they also would have, like, let's say on the news, they would see a picture, and in the background, they could see that there was some Canadian military export in another country. And just by automating some of this grunt work of going through MarketLine every day, they're able to focus more of their time on those other going deeper, which is not something we target for the automation. We wanted to kind of give them more ability to go there. So what we ended up creating is just this desktop app, which I have right now, and I will just open up. And it's pretty simple. This was basically just to abstract away having to type in on the terminal. And I understand it's a little bit small to see right now, but the crawler, we have some keywords. So the crawler will, it starts at that root page with all those lists of articles. And then it will explore more articles based on these parameters that we set. So, oh yeah, Colin, do you have something to add? So this does the scraping, and then we have a backend that analyzes it. So we just have where it starts the scrape, because actually the login was fairly complicated, which you will see in a second is probably our biggest hurdle in this project. Now we have the number of pages that we scrape. We would run this every single day. So currently we only have 50 pages, which is typically like more than enough. The depth, so it kind of branches off as a tree through the URLs that are linked in the pages, and just the keywords that we're looking for. So yeah, to run this crawler, this website MarketLine that I showed, what I didn't show is I first had to log in with my school account and two-factor authentication. So that is something that when you run the crawler, you first have to do. And this is why it wasn't as simple as just scraping a simple website. So Kelsey has access to a University of Waterloo email. I'm using my University of Guelph email. So I will just log into that really quick. Yeah. Could attach it to my collar.
That's a
Actually.
good idea.
I think my
It might
collar.
fall off. Yeah.
There we go. Yeah. I completely forgot about that. All right. All right. And then let's see if I can remember my password. Apparently not. Oh, wait, I got it this time. Okay, there we go. And now I have to go on my phone, type in this number, use my Face ID. All right, and now we're in. So this is just a quick demo. And then at the end too, I wouldn't mind some of your feedback to improve this. I'm continuing to probably work on this with Kelsey and Project Ploughshares over the summer. So any direction for where to continue with this is definitely appreciated and has a good chance of actually being implemented. So I'll just go back to that page that we wanted to get to, which is the one that I showed earlier. So here we're back to this page, and that kind of seeds the crawler at this page. So now I'll just hit this button, which says login complete. And now it's going through each of those articles and scraping those pages automatically. And then this is being sent to a backend that we have. So our backend is served with Flask, and it actually runs on a laptop that Kelsey already had. So he had an old laptop that, thanks to Colin, we just put Linux on, and it's just running as our backend 24/7, basically in his closet. So it's a very budget project. We just had to make it work with what we had. But as it scrapes all these pages, it just takes the content from all of them and then sends them to the backend. On the backend, they get analyzed by an LLM, which goes through, and obviously we have some big prompt with a bunch of keywords and things to look for to extract this information. So it just finished scraping, and now I will go back here where after some time, the transactions will show up here, anything that was able to be extracted. So here we already have over 100 transactions that we found. And again, many of them benign. But I guess I don't know exactly which ones are of interest. You'd have to talk to Kelsey about that. But this is the dashboard that the researchers would then go to, and then they can see the information that we're able to go to, get the source URL, and then either approve it or just skip it. We also are running other scrapers all the time. So we have Google, it's called Google Dorks, which is a bit of a funny name, but it just has some keywords that it plugs into Google, and it scrapes like the top, I believe, 10 or 20 URLs from that page. And I think that's the only other scraper that we're running right now. And that obviously can be more automated because there's no two-factor authentication to Google. But I think that is pretty much it for now. I think one of our biggest challenges was finding the right balance between getting what's called the recall, so making sure that we don't miss any transactions, because that's really important, but also having enough precision when we do qualify something as a transaction, so that it's not just bringing in so much fluff and kind of defeats the whole purpose. And so we ended up going for a little bit more, I guess, recall at the cost of precision, because the cost of missing a transaction is pretty high. We want the researchers to be able to trust this tool. But that's something I'll definitely be refining as I continue to work on it. But yeah. Oh. Yeah. Yeah. But I think that's all I really have to say. I guess I'm open to questions now, or comments or advice from anybody else in the audience.
Thank you, Pope.
Yeah, hi, really nice project. I'm wondering mainly if you use an LLM to assess whether a page has a transaction. Did you happen to have a past data set of, okay, so researchers have looked at, say, manually hundreds of pages and like labeled them with transaction, and even if you didn't use that to train it, did you use it to like assess the precision and recall of your algorithm? That's all I had. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And that's currently we don't have solid metrics, which is why this tool is currently not being used on its own. So the researchers currently are having to go through, but we're trying to get it so that they can trust it. So one thing that was also mentioned is having, by someone, which is very similar to your idea, which is having another model, even if it's not like a deep learning model, but something to go through with some label data and to be able to, one, benchmark it with the precision and recall, but also go through what does come up and be almost like a discriminative model to determine if something is a useful transaction to flag or not useful, which is something that we would have to build up as the researchers use this more and more and we get more data. But there might be a window to use their existing data. We don't have, I guess, negatives in that data set, but we do have a large data set of thousands of positives. So that is something that we could be open to in the future.
Not stuck on the microphone normally, but I'll extend that a little bit too. One of the things that's a major constraint at the Ploughshares project is they're stuck on Windows 9 with MS Access. And part of my impetus with pushing us towards a self-hosted option is I wanted them to be able to eventually pivot towards using PostgreSQL, which is an open source one. The idea here is now that anyone like Cole or anyone in this room could potentially contribute, whereas like MS Access, that's just locked in a closet on a laptop in Kelsey's building. So
yeah. So yeah, basically like what Colin was saying is that their actual database with all their information is separate from the database that we're using here. So behind the scenes here, we have a Postgres database. They're still using MS Access, which is basically It's pretty old, and I actually have never used it, but I think it's a GUI for SQL-like relational databases, and it's still pretty old. We offered to them to switch over to this, but they said they just want to keep it simple. And like I said, if it works, it works. That was kind of what they were thinking. And so this is almost an intermediary database before it gets added over to their, I guess, official production database. Yeah.
So I'll just quickly ask a question. I'm just wondering if you can do a quick tour of this website, because I've never been on it.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
this one that I'm on right now.
Yeah, the Ploughshares website.
Yeah. So this is the dashboard that researchers would go to after the transactions have all gone through. I think this is the main screen. Props to Colin, who was actually the one who worked on this. This was not really me. But here we just have the list of all the transactions. And I guess you can search for a transaction. You might notice some weird things in here like zeros and NA. And the reason that's there is because we didn't want to prevent adding a transaction just if we didn't have every single field that they would typically add. We don't want to skip a whole transaction just because we don't know the price. So for that, in that case, we just put a placeholder in. And that's maybe something that the researchers would have to go into deeper if they wanted to fill in those things. Another thing that Colin was really adamant about was adding macros. So I'm not very proficient with all the macros on this website, but I think his thinking was that the researchers would get fast going through it. Yeah, so this is our home, and then you can view the transaction and all the information that was able to be scraped. And then we should have a button to, I don't see the approve button, but ideally this would go into approved database, which would allow the researchers to see all the transactions. Yeah.
I think this was from the pending tab.
Oh, was I in the wrong? Oh, there we go.
there you
I clicked on an already approved one.
And
That was my mistake. So here we have an approve, and you see as a hotkey for A. So I approve, it just gets flagged with approved now in the database. So we do keep our positive and negative records. You can also manually add a new transaction here with any other information. Go through the pending. API docs are mostly for us developers going through this. And then these are our sources for the other scrapers that we have. So we have, like I showed the market line, which we had to do the login for. But I also kind of briefly mentioned we have several other scrapers that run automatically. So we have Google, where we're typing in keywords. And then I believe this is a list of our Google alerts that we're scraping. But then, oh yeah, okay, so these are our list of keywords. But I think we can also scrape specific sites, so maybe a specific news site. And this is addable. The researchers can add this without having to dig in, typing in the terminal or editing the source code.
Let's take a question online. I've got two of them. First, Richard was first, then is Rock. I know Rock, you're number one, but still, Richard was there before you. If Richard, you want to go ahead, or do you want to pass it to Rock?
I have a question.
Please.
This might have been answered already, actually, but my question was, has the researchers actually been using this project? Have you used it for a while, and have you learned anything from like the real-time usage of your project?
Yeah, so this project is not currently being fully used in production. So this is kind of a demo that we put together, and you can see it has found over 100 transactions. But I think our backend currently, I was talking to Kelsey, and this is what I'm going to be spending the summer most likely, is getting this fully up and functional with him. But no is the short answer.
All right. Thanks.
Then the next question. Rock, you had a question?
Oh yeah, great. Thank you so much for doing this. This is very interesting, learning a lot. Say, curious, I know that Cadence Technologies out of Montreal makes the world's top sniper rifles. The last few weeks in the news, at least the defense news, it's been found that Russians have been using these Cadence sniper rifles, and they found that there was somehow sold to a U.S. corporation and then somehow got in the hands of shipped to Ukraine and somehow into Russian soldiers. Does your app scraper, this tech, would that show something like that, or can you type in Cadence? Just
Yeah.
curious to see what would happen. I don't know if you're familiar with this controversy.
Yeah, so we don't have Cadence. I will say this list has not been updated recently. And so the scraper, like I said, the backend is down. So this is kind of just a demo for now. That is something that Ploughshares would aim to catch. And like I said, our goal is not to get an exhaustive list of everything, but just to scrape that market line site and then Google to try and automate some of the grunt work. But I think that is something we would definitely aim to catch if it was put into production, when it's put into production. But kind of like I said with the earlier question, it's not, the backend I think has been spun down temporarily. But yeah, so in the keywords and also in the prompt, we have a list of basically all the Canadian companies that export military goods. So that is something we would aim to catch, even if it's not coming out of Canada just in one step. If it's maybe a two-step through the US, that's exactly the kind of thing that Ploughshares aims to catch.
Oh, great. And just thinking here, I know that the Cadence CEO had tried to stop this and was very concerned. So just curious, maybe that's possible suggestion for the future to say, hey, has this company actually taken steps to be proactively a good actor? But of course, I'm sure everyone has thoughts and ideas that they're throwing your way. But thank you so much for this.
Thank you for the question.
I have one question. So I see that there's the crawl depth, and then what was the number 50 associated with
The number of
field?
pages that we scrape.
Yes. Is the amount of tabs that get open per crawl, is that managed by the crawler that you're using, or is it something that you're that you're coding for yourself?
Yeah, so that is kind of abstracted through the a package that we're using, which is called Crawl for AI, which is actually a pretty useful Python package that uses Playwright under the hood to extract Markdown from the sites. And so the number of tabs that it opens is actually more dependent on the level of concurrency that we provide to it. So the number 50, well, let me make sure I guess I word this right. So the number 50 is the total number of tabs that we open throughout the whole scrape, which goes, you saw it took 30 seconds to a minute. The number of tabs that are open at any one time depends on the concurrency, which is just a number in the source code currently. I guess that's also something that, our goal with this simple GUI is to abstract some of that stuff away. So maybe that's something that we could also add for the researchers to tune. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I know many tabs is like a browser killer for anyone.
Yeah. If it did turn out that was causing scraping issues, then that's something we would probably want to stop. But I think it seems to be working for now. So yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks again, Cole.